Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. My special guest tonight is Kevin Pina. He is a contributing editor for Haiti Info Project. Welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Sabby.
All right, so I want to kick this off by starting. I know that you've done a lot of research about Haiti, especially when it comes to U.S. intervention as well. This story came out recently. Biden emphasizes close relationship with Canada, as the nations vow to address climate change, Russia, and the Ukraine war. And the other thing that happened during this meeting, it seems like Joe Biden is trying to urge Justin Trudeau to get involved with Haiti. And I want to hear your take about that. Like, why do you feel that Joe Biden is trying to get Canada involved in Haiti intervention?
Canada is already involved. Canada has warships that are now blockading the coast of Haiti so that Haitians cannot flee what is a nightmare that is the result of both U.S. and Canadian foreign policy, beginning with the coup of 2004. That ousted the democratically elected government of Jean-Bertrand Aristide. And not just Aristide, people don't realize it was more than 7,500 officials who were forced out of office at the local level, the municipal level, and the national level, as well as a purging of the police, followed by a 13 and a half year UN foreign military occupation led primarily by the United States and Canada, who took direct responsibility saying they were going to rebuild Haiti's democratic institutions, that they were going to rebuild the police, they were going to rebuild the judiciary, they're going to rebuild the courts. And of course, we see the nightmare that Haiti is today, which is the result of that policy. And Canada has marched in lockstep with U.S. foreign policy before and since the coup of 2004.
This is crazy. Why do you think Justin Trudeau seems to be okay with this?
Well, it's not just Justin Trudeau. It's happened under successive Canadian administrations, going all the way back to Paul Martin. Both liberal and conservative parties have supported intervention in Haiti, have supported a policy of intervening in Haiti's political landscape, of intervening in the outcome of Haiti's elections. But again, taking near virtual 100% responsibility for the police, the judiciary, and the prison system, which today are the three pillars of the nightmare that so-called gangs, which now Haitians are no longer calling them gangs, they're now calling them paramilitary groups, because these are military structured organizations. These are no longer just people who decided to get together and control a neighborhood with guns. These are all organizations that are military in structure and design. They have a head at the top. They have lieutenants, they've got captains at the local levels. And more importantly, they've all been part of a larger structure coming down from the top of the U.S. installed PHTK political party that began with a direct intervention of then Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton that brought Michel Martelly to power, intervening, actually changing the way the elections were tabulated, pushing the OAS to support that as well, leading ultimately to a second successive regime of Jovenel Moïse. Throughout this time, I don't think people realize there were protests of tens of thousands of people. From the very day that Martelly was elected to the very day that Jovenel Moïse was killed, there were tens of thousands of protests against election fraud, whether it be Martelly's election or whether it be Jovenel Moïse. And the most important thing to remember is that the police were part of that regime. And that part of the strategy of the PHTK to stay in power was to use the police as cutouts, was to use the police to guide and create relationships with so-called gangs, which are really paramilitary organizations that were used against Haiti's opposition during successive protests against those regimes. And that when Jovenel Moïse was killed, they lost that structure, but most of it remains intact. We can still show, there was a recent internal poll that was taken inside of Haiti where from neighborhoods, they said that they believe that more than 80% of the police still have contacts with paramilitary gangs in poor neighborhoods in Port-au-Prince. So it's part of a structure, right? That came out of intervention that the United States and Canada both have direct responsibility for.
Well said. I know even going back to 1915, I was telling the audience about this a couple weeks ago. Woodrow Wilson. So Woodrow Wilson, at one point, he sent in the U.S. Marines to occupy Haiti and to take over their banking industry and their political sphere. So even if we go all the way back to 1915, even Woodrow Wilson, I want people to understand this isn't something that started with Joe Biden or Bill Clinton. Like, this goes all the way back to Woodrow Wilson. And we have to wonder, like, the economic state that we see Haiti in today, we can point fingers in reference to U.S. intervention. There was no reason for the U.S. government to intervene in Haiti even back then. But from what I understand, Woodrow Wilson was pushed to do so by the banks.
Well, that's true, but it's not even comparable to what their role has been. Again, 13 years, although the U.S. military occupation was 19 years. And at that time, it was the longest U.S. military occupation in history before the occupation of Afghanistan, of course, overtook that record. And yes, there was also resistance, the Cacos, the famous resistance wars led by Charlemagne Perrault. There was, the United States imposed an almost quasi-slavery system, where in order for Haitians to earn a living, they had to work on gangs, on chain gangs, basically. If there was any question about who controlled Haiti, it was the U.S. Marines. But that's not even comparable to what happened under the United Nations and that coup of 2004. That under Martelly's regime, there were sweetheart deals that were cut with mining companies in the United States and in Canada. There were sweetheart deals that were made with apparel manufacturers in both of those countries. And so there's a contemporary economic reason behind United States and Canadian intervention in Haiti today. When it comes to workers, Haitian workers hold down the bottom of the price of wage in the region. We know basic economics, if the wages of the lowest go up, then all those wages go up. Well, just by threatening to move to Haiti, U.S. and Canadian apparel manufacturers can force down demands of workers in Honduras, can force down demands of other workers in the union, just by simply making the threat of taking advantage of Haiti's cheaper labor, saving them tens of millions of dollars. I don't think people realize that. But more importantly, when Aristide was in office, he had commissioned one of the most deep studies of Haiti's mineral wealth. And what was discovered, and there was a published book called the Lavalas White Paper. It's called Dans le Humain. And in that geological survey, it was discovered that Haiti has more than 300 tons of iridium. If you look at the price of iridium today, you can see that this is literally hundreds of billions of dollars that is sitting under Haitian soil. And these mining companies are chomping at the bit to get at it. Under Martelly, he signed sweetheart deals with them that they could never actualize, because Haiti's 1987 constitution, while it doesn't use the word nationalize, it makes it very clear that all of Haiti's mineral wealth is to be used on the national collectivity, is the term it used, which is virtually what it means is nationalization. This is exactly why Martelly and Jovenel Moïse have pushed so hard, and the U.S. and Canada have supported them in pushing so hard to have a constitutional referendum. I don't know if you heard this. It's not just about presidential elections anymore. It's about the necessity for a constitutional referendum. And part of that will be to roll back that term in the 1987 Constitution that prohibits them from fully capitalizing and ripping off Haiti's mineral wealth. That's really what is at the heart of a lot of this right now.
I know a lot of times, like, people, I don't like this term, but sometimes people refer to these countries as like third world countries, so to speak. But I try to educate people and make them aware that some of these countries that you refer to as third world countries actually are rich in resources. What do you think Haitians that are in Haiti, what do you think? Is there anything that they can do to try to push back on this? And I want to ask your opinion about this gentleman that they call Barbecue. So Dan Cohen, he's been on here before. He's done a documentary about Barbecue when he went to Haiti. Do you think that this is someone that can actually help the Haitian people rebel and push back, or do you feel like he's not a part of the solution? He's more part of the problem?
Well, Dan and really the main person who's proffering that is Kim Ives. And Dan came into that later. I've been involved in Haiti for 33 years. I was there when Aristide ran his first election campaign. I lived there for 10 years. Our first son was born there. I still have family there. We differ very much on this question. And by the way, one of their primary, rebuttals is, well, it's a NED-sponsored human rights organization, RNDDH, who's behind, besmirching Barbecue's reputation. Well, I'm not RNDDH. And I have contacts in those communities and have maintained them over decades. And anybody who knows my work knows that I was very critical, and I can tell you who the precursor of RNDDH is, and that's the NCHR, the National Coalition for Haitian Rights, which was run by Joseph McCalla. They ultimately changed their name because of the horrendous human rights reporting that Pierre Esperance and Jolene Gilles were twisting about what the human rights abuses that were happening after the 2004 coup. A lot of it, my reporting on the truth of what was going on the ground, battling term for term RNDDH's argument. So just to get that out of the way, I am not RNDDH, and my information comes from people in those neighborhoods. Barbecue, if his goal is revolution, and Kim likes to spin it as a Marxist revolution, well, that means that you would be, the idea is that you're going to arm the people for rebellion. Barbecue doesn't trust the people to give them guns. Barbecue and his close lieutenants hold guns, and have a lot of guns, heavy caliber weaponry. Just February 28th, which is the anniversary of the 2004 coup, because it happened on February 29th, but this last February, there was no 28th, it wasn't a leap year. There were commemorations of the 2004 coup that were planned. Early in the morning, at 7 o'clock in the morning, men with mass guns came into Solino and Bel Air. They threw grenades. They opened up with automatic weaponry on the population. And this signaled to the local gangs, including Jimmy Cherizier, the former police officer, and the G9, the G9 gang. It became open season on the population. And we have very close information confirmed by local press, as well as people who live in the neighborhoods, that G9 worked very closely with the police. They went into Bel Air with the police and indiscriminately killed people. They used a justification that they were going after another gang, a rival gang of kidnappers. Often the apologia of intergang warfare is used to cover human rights crimes that have other objectives. And again, they burned down entire blocks. Just horrendous footage. I can't even, Haiti Information Project, we can't publish in good conscience those images, but I have to look at them. Those horrendous images, and I have to catalog them, and I have to put the metadata in, and I've got to archive them, and I can tell you they're just horrendous human rights violations that were committed that week after that displaced at least 600 to 1,000 people from those neighborhoods. At least 60 people were killed. At least 20 of them burned alive in their homes. And it was G9, Barbecue's group, that worked with the police in concert. Now, here's the bigger issue. We can look at the specifics of G9 and Jimmy Cherizier in isolation, but that is not what we do. We look at them in the larger phenomenon of what is the end game? What is this ultimately going to result in, this gang activity and this excuse of intergang warfare? Well, the way that the people that I speak to in Haiti look at it is that these are paramilitary organizations that have a clear objective and strategy. And they look as if they are operating in isolation, but in fact they are not, because they all have the same ultimate goals. Those goals, three main goals. One is those neighborhoods that Jimmy Cherizier occupies in particular are former bastions of Lavalas. Lavalas was the majority political party under Jean-Bertrand Aristide, overthrew 2 U.S.-backed coups. And those neighborhoods, Solino and Bel Air, have been launching sites. I was there after the 2004 coup. I can tell you that that's where the resistance to the coup was from. Those neighborhoods is where thousands of people would rise up and they would brave being shot at by U.S. Marines first, brave being shot at by United Nations soldiers, and by the UN-trained Haitian police, particularly the guys with the sharpshooters who would take headshots. You know, that was meant to send a message of terror. But those populations that resisted came from those neighborhoods that are today being occupied by paramilitary organizations. And you can't have protests in those neighborhoods, independent of what they will allow. Those neighborhoods have spontaneously risen up historically and have taken to the street to make it clear their demands and their resistance to what they consider to be poor policies and or fraudulent elections. That cannot happen now. That's objective one. Objective two is, as we approach elections, entire populations are being displaced by these so-called occupations of these paramilitaries, and they're moving and changing the dynamic of who the electorate is when they force thousands of people to flee the capital to the provinces in the countryside, or to change to other areas. It's like a shell game. They attack one area, they claim it's intergang warfare, the population is displaced, and they become these nomads who no longer have the right to vote, right? A lot of them are losing their papers. It's going to be, this is going to change the electoral landscape, this displacement of populations, particularly in the capital, Port-au-Prince. Third, every kidnapping, every violent action they commit is now used as justification for foreign intervention and boots on the ground. Those are, according to the people that I speak with, who I collaborate with on the ground in Haiti, these are the three main objectives. Follow through lines, goals. If you look at what the actual outcome is of these paramilitary organizations and the role they're playing in the capital. And again, I'll also say many of them still maintain direct contact with the police force, with the Police Nationale d'Haïti.
That's interesting. I want to get everyone's attention to this here, especially for those who are just joining. It says Haiti's crisis looms large as Biden visits Canada's Trudeau. And this piece right here is particularly interesting. I really want people to really focus on what Joe Biden is really trying to do here. It says Washington has been pushing Ottawa to lead a multinational armed force in Haiti, and Biden is expected to seek an answer from Trudeau on whether Ottawa intends to take up the mission during his visit to the Canadian capital on Thursday and Friday. So they're talking about armed force here. And this is what I want people to really pay attention to this. I always tell people on the show that, foreign policy is domestic policy, because oftentimes we, in some way, shape, or form, are involved. It's just the reality of the situation. But why would the U.S. government, in your opinion, why are the U.S. government so concerned about these so-called gangs in Haiti? Why is that so concerning to President Biden? And I asked that question because if we go back to the crisis in Rwanda, remember, President Bill Clinton chose not to get involved, not to intervene. But for some reason, the U.S. government feels the need to intervene here with everything that's happening in Haiti.
Well, remember, Haiti still does not have political sovereignty. That the government of Ariel Henry is there as a result of the so-called core group, which was formed after the 2004 coup, of nations so-called Friends of Haiti, who changed their name to the core group, led by the United States, France, and Canada. And it is the United States. The only reason the Ariel Henry government is in power today is by virtue of the support of the United States government. There's no other way. It does not have widespread popular support, period. And every independent move of independent political thinking, any independent move of political organizing has been forestalled and cut off and unceremoniously dismissed. I mean, isn't that ultimately why Daniel Foote resigned, right? Or ostensibly, that's why he said he resigned, is because the United States will not change its policy. And that policy is one of intervention. As you rightfully said, since 1915 to the present, U.S. foreign policy, at its fundamentals, and its fundamentals has not changed, and that is Haitians do not have the right to political independence. It goes to the Cold War. It goes to the question of Cuba in the region, right? It goes to the question of the elite, the U.S.-backed elites in Haiti that control the majority of the population. It goes to U.S. intervention having a hand in the outcome of elections in Haiti. And when they couldn't ensure the outcome, 2 coups d'etats, one in 1991, one in 2004. This is a history of intervention that U.S. foreign policy has at its core. And then, of course, there's the role of non-governmental organizations, all of whom are very much like missionary organizations. We are bringing to Haiti that which the Haitians cannot do for themselves, which in itself, as you can think about, is really insulting. Just as Haiti has its own spiritual leaders, thank you, those people trying to bring Christ to Haiti, Haiti also has its own political leaders and its own leadership, particularly at the base, in those community organizations and structures that still cling to existence today. It's just that they've never been given a voice. It has always been trying to buy off, to offer a cut of the deal to various political actors in Haiti in order to maintain the status quo. What's the status quo? The status quo is a few families that control the importation of goods into Haiti, the Mervs, the Acras, the Haluns, the Bijots, right? Because remember that the United States helped to destroy Haiti's ability to feed itself. Part of U.S. foreign policy and intervention was destroyed Haiti's ability to feed itself. Well, what replaced that? How do Haitians eat? Well, it became U.S. reliance upon a group of allies in the elite, the wealthy elite, who control the economy by virtue of controlling the monopoly. These are not free market capitalists. These are monopolists who've shown that they'll kill, they'll murder, they'll support gangs, they'll support paramilitary organizations in order to maintain their power and privilege in that country. And then the U.S., in an insulting way, calls them the private sector, right? They whitewash them as this, but these are not, again, free market capitalists. These are monopolists who've relied on coups d'etats and relied upon political violence to maintain their power and privilege while the U.S. turned a blind eye, because these same wealthy individuals also have lawyers on K Street, also have accountants in the United States and Paris and Ottawa who help to lobby the politicians in those three countries to keep the gravy train going. Everybody benefits from this monopolistic, brutal elite that the United States is more comfortable partnering with than those Haitians who are fighting for dignity and true sovereignty.
So last year I saw that cholera has resurfaced in Haiti because they have a small supply of clean water. I also saw that there was a food shortage issue in Haiti. We have this issue with Henri. The people were protesting. They were heavily against him, and rightfully so. His response was basically just to tell the people, like, this is just how it is right now. You just have to kind of like deal with it. And then on top of that, over the past couple of years, the multiple earthquakes that have happened in Haiti that have also displaced people. And then we had Haitian migrants trying to come to the United States and Joe Biden to turn them away and telling them not to come here. I mean, how is this, at this point in time, how is this not a human rights issue with everything that's happening with people there? I don't understand how, if you look at the UN, how do they not even see this as a human rights issue?
Good question, Sabby. Well, let's start with the cholera. It was the United Nations who brought cholera to Haiti. Haiti had never had a cholera epidemic until Nepalese soldiers brought it. They dumped their sewage in one of Haiti's main rivers that then spread throughout the country, and it killed more than 10,000 people. Haitians said, the United Nations brought this to our country and protested. The United Nations response, and you can look this up, was to gun down protesters in Cap-Haïtien, au Cap, Haiti's second largest city. And then what did they say? it wasn't us. It was intergang warfare. There's that intergang warfare again, right? That favorite cover-up that's used to cover up real objectives, real killing.
Wait, I'm sorry, that was the United Nations response?
That's right. The United Nations gunned down protesters in Cap Haitien when there were massive protests against the United Nations trying to expose that they had brought cholera to Haiti. That's correct. And then they said that it was intergang warfare, that famous, brush off of intergang warfare. And then if we talk about Haiti's economy and people and food insecurity, again, the monopolists in Haiti are making money hand over fist because Haitians have money, because Haiti's GDP now is dependent upon remittances. More than 80% of Haiti's economy this year is going to be family and friends who are sending money to their loved ones to keep them alive. Haiti doesn't have an economy that's manufacturing anything or that's creating wealth from economically. It's people who are sending money to keep their loved ones alive. Well, where does that money go? Well, they have a monopoly that controls the importation of rice and beans, their staples, right? And cooking oil and tomato sauce. Well, it goes back into the hands of those few families that control that importation, the same as it always was, except now they're charging more money for it with inflation. Does the United States or do reporters talk about that at all? No. Am I making it up? Do your own research. I welcome people to do their own research. I gave you the names of those families earlier. People are relying upon one another. That's one of the things about, folks who don't have a lot, is that in order to survive, they have to rely upon one another to ensure their longevity. And more that has brought Haitian communities tighter and more tight-knit than ever. They were once tight-knit before those two successive coups, but we've seen penetration and infiltration of Haitian communities by non-governmental organizations that deeply damaged those communities. Today, that tight fabric of interwoven families is being restitched as people are forced by the current circumstances to rely upon one another for survival. It's an amazing system. Each one feed one in many instances. But again, all of this is to create a dysfunctional society that, I should say, U.S. foreign policy and Canadian foreign policy would rather see a dysfunctional society that is slowly bleeding itself away than to permit any independent political trajectory that would alter the fundamental deal that the U.S. foreign policy has relied upon to maintain the status quo of U.S. foreign policy in that country by virtue of their relationship with this wealthy elite. They are still there. Although we have seen, so Canada sanctions the Bijou family. The Bijou family are billionaires, right? They were ultimately foreigners who relocated in Haiti and they took over parts of the economy. Well, Canada sanctions Bijou and clearly says that the Bijou family, is Gilbert Bijou. Before that, it was his father, Benjamin Bijou. But isn't it interesting that the United States doesn't sanction Bijou? Nothing. So the sanctions in Canada are toothless anyway. There's really no repercussions for those people on the sanction list. But then it really speaks volumes when Canada will sanction somebody like Gilbert Bijou, but the United States won't. Why? Because Gilbert Bijou is a large property owner in Miami, right? A large property owner in the United States. Again, this guy's got lawyers on K Street. He's got PR representatives. He pays millions of dollars to lobby Congress. He's golfing buddies with some of them, Democrat and Republican. They're not going to sanction him. These are long-term sweetheart relationships that have been going on for far too long. Haitians have known it. They've been speaking out against it. Jean-Bertrand Aristide's elections interrupted them, only end up in coup d'etats. But it is still the fundamental bedrock of U.S. foreign policy to maintain relationships with those elites.
That's interesting. It always goes back to the money. That's what I always tell people. It always goes back to the money. Considering history, do you think that France should provide some type of monetary compensation to Haiti?
Absolutely. That was one of the reasons that Jean-Bertrand Aristide was overthrown in 2004 was, he began in 2001 a campaign of reparations and began to strongly in 2003, ramped up that campaign to demand that France pay not only what the amount was worth when they stole that money, when they forced Haiti to pay the slave owners for them overthrowing slavery. I mean, talk about insult to injury, right? Not only do you have to battle these people to get them out of the country to end slavery, but then you've got to recompense them for having won, right? To the tune of what is now, estimated to be more than $25 billion. And Aristide was really the first one to call for those reparations. So you probably know that. There was this big expose in the New York Times, the ransom, which for the first time, very interestingly, actually told the truth. And actually called it a coup d'etat in 2004. Very interesting change in history or historical terms for the New York Times. If anybody who's close to watching the permutations of the New York Times. But absolutely, it was a correct demand then. It's an even more correct demand now, but it's not just France. The United States, our country, owes Haiti reparations for the political interference and the damage that we have caused by a failed U.S. foreign policy that has affected generations in that country. And we don't have to go back to 1915. We can start with the contemporary 2004 coup against Aristide, how it destroyed Haiti's democratic institutions, led by the Bush administration, the same Bush administration who lied about weapons of mass destruction, lied about Jean-Bertrand Aristide, lied to the world about what the real deal was in Haiti. It was not a popular revolt that overthrew him. It was Guy Philippe and Jodel Chamblain and paramilitary forces that were bivouacked in the Dominican Republic, who had brand new M16s and M50s, who came across the border. When the so-called opposition against Aristide, those demonstrations petered out, those guys came across the border, started killing the population, started killing police. They were the ones that the U.S. ultimately used as a pretext to then lie to the world and say that Aristide had resigned, when in fact Aristide did not resign and was unceremoniously taken out by U.S. Marines and the U.S. Charge d'Affaires, put on a plane and flown to Bangui, Africa. Bangui, the capital of help me here. Bangui. Oh, goodness gracious. I want to say Congo, but I think it was a Congo. Anyway, none of us had heard of it. Bangui before, unfortunately, but it's certainly on my geographical list today. They tried to keep him in exile. Patterson in Jamaica allowed him to come to Jamaica for a short period of time. The Obama administration objected, sided with the elite, sided with the coup d'etat, the putschists, and then he ultimately ended up in exile in South Africa. But the big lie, that was the big lie of the Bush administration and U.S. foreign policy, was that this was a dictator who had fallen on his own sword, a man who was a former priest who had meant to do so many great things for Haiti, ultimately dissolved on the weight of his own corruption, which was a complete lie. The successive U.S. administration spent more than $30 million trying to pin the cocaine tail on the Aristide donkey, only to never have enough information or enough evidence to indict. No evidence. Aristide has never been indicted for either corruption or for drug trafficking, but that still remains their two big arguments today. Of course, that's on the right. On the left, of course, the argument is that Aristide sold out to the bourgeoisie, right? You talk to the, some of these Marxist folks. Aristide was a sellout who ultimately cut deals, that was against the class interests of the majority of Haitians. Simplistic analysis. What is Aristide doing today? My God, after all these piles of garbage that they have heaped on him, garbage character assassinations, what is Aristide doing? Well, just this Sunday, he had a graduation ceremony for more than 5,000 doctors, nurses, lawyers, architects at the Aristide University. 5,000 individuals graduating at that university who are all committed to social justice in Haiti, Since when have you ever heard a corrupt dictator ever doing that? I mean, historically, of a country whatever, and by the way, I can tell you how he raised the money. You can go to the Aristide Foundation website and you can see the list of donors. The other lie, Aristide has $500 million, more crap. Yeah, I mean, it never ends. The other argument, Aristide, you probably never heard this one. This is by the former Haitian ambassador to Washington, and Washington loved him. He's a darling of theirs, Raymond Joseph, that Aristide had taken a baby and crushed it mortar pestle style and had himself bathed in the blood to reassure his election. I don't know if you ever heard that one. You can look it up though. Just pile upon pile of crap, from the left, from the Marxist, so-called Marxist intellectuals who have very little information about what was going on back then and about why Aristide made some of the decisions he made, to the right who just manufacture stories. Yeah, I mean, it just never ends, Sabby. And so, I have never looked at this struggle in Haiti as about Aristide, but I have seen so much trash that I have to say something. But most of my contacts, even during the time that I lived in Haiti, were always at the grassroots. I was the guy who was in the trenches with those folks during those protests, the only white guy there with a camera, often documenting the atrocities, the human rights abuses that were being committed against them after the 2004 coup. I never, but I have to say something only because the cognitive dissonance that is created between this graduation ceremony Sunday and all the trash they've heaped on that poor man, just has to be called, I have to speak to my own cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that one of the ongoing conflicts that I've seen also in reference to Haiti, there seems to be this ongoing conflict between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. I was just a couple of months ago, we reported on the Haitian residents that lived in the Dominican Republic. Some of them have been there for years, right? And so the Dominican Republic started to implement these new laws, which basically will remove the Haitians who have been living there for years. And there was a woman who was interviewed on Al Jazeera, and she was saying that her son was born in the Dominican Republic, even though they're Haitian, he was born there. And they were even trying to tell them that they were now not residents and that they needed to leave. So there were, I guess, it looked like hundreds of Haitians that lived in the Dominican Republic that were trying to find a way to stay there, and so that they're not booted back to Haiti. And to me, I felt like it was more of the rules that they put in place. It seemed like to me it was solely to target the Haitian immigrants that lived in the Dominican Republic, not people who they refer to as illegal immigrants. To me, it seemed like it was solely targeted towards the Haitian immigrants. Why so much turmoil, do you think, between those two? Because they share an island. I kind of look at it as though, look, we're in this together, but it doesn't seem to be that way. It definitely seems like to me that there's a lot of conflict there. And Henry Louis Gates, he actually had a documentary about this when he went to the Dominican Republic and he went to Haiti. And he talked about this conflict as well. Is there seems to be no community between the two.
Well, only when it suits U.S. foreign policy. I mean, the U.S. embassy knew that Guy Philippe and Jodel Champlain and those paramilitaries with U.S. guns were in Haiti. I mean, we're in the Dominican Republic before they invaded Haiti to overthrow Aristide. The Balaguer government knew that they were there. It openly acknowledged that those Haitians were there. They didn't deport them. They didn't intervene to take those Haitians, armed Haitians, off their soil. Quite the contrary. They enabled them to invade Haiti to overthrow the constitutional government. So we can't look at the Dominican Republic and its racist policy towards Haitians outside of the context of U.S. foreign policy. The U.S. embassy still has tremendous sway in the DR, as it does in Haiti. The Dominican military has incredible relations, if you can look this up, through the IMET and other U.S. security programs, through the Pentagon. The U.S. Southcom has very close ties, particularly its leadership, to the United States military and the Pentagon policy. Um, what you said was just the tip of the iceberg. You know, the Abinader government has the current president, Abinader, is pursuing a racist policy that is demonizing Haitians as the problem in order to divert the Dominican population away from its own problems and away from the corruption of his administration. That's how many Dominicans who I speak with it, that's how they portray it. And the level of racism you pointed out is not the worst of it. The worst of it is that today Dominicans will tell you that Haitian women are specifically coming into their country to give birth in Dominican hospitals to claim Dominican citizenship, right? Even though the majority of the Dominican economy depends upon those same Haitians to maintain their standard of living, whether that be their contribution as cheap labor to the DR's GDP, or whether that be the fact that the majority trading partner with the Dominican Republic still remains Haiti, right? A large part of the Dominican economy. So then you have to ask yourself, well, why is Abinader focusing on demonizing Haitians? And most of the folks in the left in the DR, or the human rights organizations, or the political organizations that have any real sensitivity around this issue that are anti-racist, will tell you it's to distract from his own corruption of his own government. It's to distract and demonize Haitians as the problem, rather than have them look at what the real problem is, which is that government itself.
It's the scapegoat. It's the scapegoat, because we do the same thing in the US. It's like, for the people who complain about the immigrants are here, they say all the Mexicans are coming here and taking our jobs, which they're not. For the people who say they need to leave the country, do they even understand what would happen to the economy here in the US if that were to happen? I don't think a lot of people realize that.
No, who picks your grapes, right? Who picks your lettuce? You know, all the stuff, those jobs that Americans don't want to do. But you know, that raises another question, which is that there are also Haitians who were born here in this country who are also unceremoniously put on planes and flown back to Haiti and deported to Haiti, right? That's also happening. And then Biden's humanitarian parole has created such a mess for Haitians. It itself is an impingement on Haitian sovereignty, because thousands of Haitians are applying for Haitian passports to come to the United States to be sponsored by their loved ones and their friends, which is creating tension among them as well, between them as well, forcing that financial responsibility on their loved one and their friends for sponsorship. But also, it's creating this. If you looked at the images at the Haitian immigration offices, Haitians are literally willing to give up. Many of the same Haitians who'd be in the streets today, except for the control of paramilitary gangs, are taking advantage of the safety valve that Biden has presented and offered, the humanitarian parole program, and they're clamoring and literally sometimes suffocating one another in line to get those passports to leave. It's creating huge divisions between Haiti's people who want to leave and the diaspora who they want to sponsor them to leave. It's creating divisions within Haiti as Haitians clamor and fight for a spot. It's the police are taking advantage of it. They're sexually abusing women to jump in the line. They're taking payoffs for people to jump in the lines. Biden's humanitarian parole program also means that those Haitians who have a legitimate reason to want political asylum based upon repression, political repression, are being told the humanitarian parole program is your only avenue to enter Haiti. Well, that's just quite wrong. That flies in the face of the very reason that we allow people to declare political asylum and to take refuge in this country, because of political repression. So, and then again, you've got Canada patrolling the Haiti's coastline, not allowing people to flee by boat. You've got Biden's humanitarian program inside of Haiti creating havoc, having Haitians divided, fighting for their place in line. At the same time, you've got the paramilitary gangs displacing entire populations. Are you getting a picture of this, Sabby? What's painted here, right? This is the formula. Many Haitians do not believe that this is accidental, but this is a confluence of forces that is intentional in order to justify the overt. Right now, they have de facto control of Haiti politically by virtue of their boy, Ariel Henry, and government. What they don't have is control of the physicality of Haiti. But this confluence of those three things is giving them the perfect pretext and justification. And we're now even hearing, I was surprised to hear Daniel Foote yesterday on NPR now saying the people he's talking to in Haiti who were opposed to U.S. intervention or to foreign intervention are now, they're desperate to have somebody there. I don't agree with that, because most of the people I speak to, as difficult as it is, still do not want foreigners with boots on the ground in their country. But each day is a grind. Again, this is an intentional slow bleeding of Haiti's popular movement, of those people who have traditionally resisted U.S. foreign policy, who come from those poor neighborhoods, not only in the capital, but in Cap-Haïtien, in Okai, in Jérémie, in Saint-Marc, other large cities that also have their popular movements in the so-called popular neighborhoods. They are the ones who are the subject of this slow bleeding, because they are the ones who have traditionally been the heart and base of resistance to U.S. foreign policy in Haiti.
All right, Kevin, I have one more question for you, because I always have to ask, what is the end game? What do you feel is, at least the U.S. government, what do you feel their end goal is? What do they want to happen to Haiti? Do they want to, constantly suppress this country? Do they want to demolish this country? What do you feel is the end game?
Well, they rely on a lot of make-believe, right? They create organizations, structures in Haiti out of whole cloth. Just as to justify the 2004 coup, they created the so-called Council of the Wise, right? Which then appointed La Torture, Gerard La Torture, prime minister, who was in Boca Raton, Florida, who flew in and then took charge of the country for U.S. foreign policy. The Council of the Wise. Now, with the support of the U.S., they've created the High Transition Council, right? And the High Transition Council is going to create the new Conseil Electoral Provisoire, election council, right? But it's all make-believe. These are organizations that never existed within Haiti's constitution, have never existed in Haiti before. They're making them from whole cloth in order to justify a process to control the elections. That's the end game. They want elections because that's their panacea to say, oh, it's all democratic, and now let's give them all support, and now we're going to stabilize the situation, even though it's a repetition of an endless cycle that has ended. U.S.-sponsored elections have always ended in mayhem and more disarray and more division. But they're going to keep creating organizations like the Conseil du Sage, the Council of the Wise, the Haitian Transition Council, right? All these organizations that just seemingly come out of thin air, that then they give legitimacy to, that are then, again, to oversee the electoral process, regardless of whether at the end of it, the Haitian population sees them as legitimate and credible. They're not going to have legitimate and credible elections in that country, and they should know by now, given the number of times they've tried this same formula. They're not going to have them again if they don't allow real Haitians who are not connected to the status quo politics of corrupt politics in that country, leading the charge, leading the movement to rebuild Haiti's democratic institutions, to stabilize the country before elections with noted, trusted figures in Haitian society. And it can be done. I know they keep saying, well, they've tried it, and they, Haitians just don't seem to be able to get their act together. Well, every time they've gotten their act together and they've been independent, there has been an intervention. Somebody has showed up to knock it off its center and put it back in the direction that U.S. foreign policy demands.
Yep.
They don't just say, hey, we're going to get out of here and let you guys figure it out. They don't do that. They've got their fingers in the pot. They always have. Folks show up to make sure it goes in the direction that the United States and Canada want. So I'm not hopeful that anything is going to happen in the near future except this continual slow bleed. But I know that the Haitian diaspora throughout the world is resilient. It continues to support its loved ones and friends inside of Haiti who have those true intentions for real change in the country. So it's this race. How many of those people are going to die and fall versus how many of them can we support through real solidarity to keep them alive, to keep them in a position to continue demanding their rights and Haitian sovereignty and a real change in their country? I have no crystal ball, Sabby. I wish I did. All I can tell you is I know what won't work again, and that I know that the people who are there who can make it work continue to be there and continue to be resolute. And it continues to be this battle between who's going to determine the outcome of Haiti's future.
Kevin, thank you. Thank you so much. A wealth of information here. Where can people find you, Kevin?
Well, you can, I would suggest people go to Twitter. That's the main outlet that Haiti Information Project uses. It's at Haiti Info Proj, the @ HAITIINFOPROJ.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you. Like, guys, definitely make sure you're following Haiti Info Project on Twitter. There's a lot of information there. Thank you so much, Kevin.
My pleasure, Sabby. Have a great day.
Bye. All right, guys, I hope you learned something there. Kevin, again, follow Haiti Info Project on Twitter. Lots of videos, a lot of articles, like they are doing the damn thing. So definitely follow them if you're interested learning more about what's happening in Haiti. I'm going to go to some of the comments and then we'll move on to the other news stories. Thank you for the super chat. Roger, Sabby asked him about the guy named Barbecue. Yes, I did. I remember to do that. Johanna says Michael Martelly was the U.S. selected president. Jovenel Moise was his successor. Their role is to give over Haiti's treasure to the U.S./foreigners. Ashura is in the chat. John Bertrand Aristide was a better Black Bernie with a spine. I love it, Ashura. Pitchforks are coming, says Canada is aiding and abetting. And the Oracle says all roads lead back to the United States, 100%. This is why I always tell you guys, foreign policy is domestic policy, right? So you need to know about that as well.